welcome you to City Beat. I'm Kevin Miller, your host, and it's our opportunity to talk to City Manager in the City of Port Huron, James Freed. James, always good to
be
sit
here.
down and talk
Thanks
with
for the
you.
invitation.
So our goal here will be just to kind of hop topics, if you will, on what's the pulse of the City of Port Huron. And I know a lot of boaters are going to want to hear, all right, what's the story and what's going on with the canal and I think the ages-old unit that came down into the canal.
Yeah, so we have the Black River Canal. It's about 100 years old. It was originally dug out to flush out the Black River back when all the factories would pollute the river. Times have changed, and so that has become essentially a major boating gateway into the city. Provides safe refuge off the Great Lake. I've been out there when weather kicks up, and getting down the St. Clair River can be a little precarious when the wind kicks up, and so that provides safe passage into the city. We had major flooding in the city of Port Huron, and when it floods, the canal reverses. And so we had logs and trees coming reverse flow down the canal. It rammed the Tanner Gate, which has been there. The Tanner Gate is a flood relief, essentially a flood gate that comes down when when the north wind blows and the east wind blows, and it keeps sand from going into the canal. And that's why we have to dredge the mouth of the canal every year. It was designed that way. The Tanner Gate had a catastrophic failure. It broke off, it hung off. The damage, we don't know what the damage is to the gate itself, but we do know that the structure itself is solid, but the steel brackets that hold it on, the mechanisms and mechanics that lift it are pretty much shot and destroyed and bent. And so right now, we've devised a plan that will require us to build 2 cofferdams on each side of the Tanner Gate to drain it, which will allow us to begin lifting the material out of there. We can't pull the gate out because there's nothing preventing all that sand from going further deep in the canal. So the gate is actually in there, being left in there for a purpose, so it blocks that material from going any further down the canal. We are working with the state of Michigan. We do not have the legal authority to enter that water.
Really?
Correct. So everyone's like, why aren't you out there fixing it right now? I was like, I would, but I have to get a permit from the state of Michigan. And so they're concerned about a whole bunch of host of items, including the hydraulic study on what this is going to do to the Black River for the next couple of months. Remember, we would have to get this project executed and done before spring floodwaters come because there'll be hydraulic issues in the floodplain. So there's a whole host of things they're looking at, but we anticipate in the next month to be getting started to build those cofferdams, to remove the gate, really assess where we're at, and then rapidly try to repair that gate as fast as possible. It does not appear that canal will be open this summer. We are hopeful that it will be open next season, but it doesn't look like we're going to get it done this year. The cost, we don't know what it's going to cost. It could be between $500,000 or $1 million. There's going to be, the erosion is a huge part of it. The banks of the canal have eroded so badly that we're not even sure we get heavy equipment down there to dredge the canal. And so whether that's seawall and armoring, we're going to have to do something to shore up the canal banks before we can be actually moving heavier equipment out there. And so it's a very complex issue, catastrophic failure. I know folks driving by thinks it looks pretty simple, just lift the gate out and set it back on. It is not that simple, and it's going to require a lot of permitting from the state of Michigan. And so I wouldn't say the state of Michigan slow walking the permit. That would not be the right thing to say.
That would be politically correct.
Many people can make that compelling argument. The issue becomes we understand there's concerns, but it's already dammed up. The damage has already been done. Give us the opportunity to get in there and fix it and do it in a timely fashion.
Well, most people don't know, and I believe that that was electronically controlled by someone somewhere far off that could be able to put it up or down, right?
Well, both. We had control of it as well. But actually, it had a wind sensor. So if you look out to the mouth of the canal, it looks like there's a giant birdhouse on a pole.
Okay.
That's not a birdhouse. It's a wind sensor. So when that wind kicks up, it automatically shuts the Tanner Gate. So that gate will close by itself in the middle of the night or in the middle of the day based on the wind flow, which will prevent the sand from coming down the canal. Because once it gets past the Tanner Gate, then we have a real issue trying to get dredging equipment past the Gratiot Bridge and past the superstructure.
So basically it stays down now because otherwise you would have tremendous flow of sand all the way into the canal.
It's just hanging there. Preventing that flow. And there's some material that's getting by, but if you do an aerial view, which we flew over it, we did a sortie over it a couple weeks ago to look at it, and the sand is actually, the lake waves push the body of sand so it migrates. So it's not like there's sand flowing over top of it, it's actually the pile of sand moving and shifting. It's a pretty incredible force of nature to move. I mean, you're talking about 400 feet of sand that migrates from the pressure of the lake.
So now the next part of this will be the state hiring a contractor to come in?
No, we'll do that. We'll get the permitting, we'll cofferdam it, we'll get the repairs going. My whole thing is we'll fix it, get it fixed, get it repaired, and we'll deal with who's going to pay for what later.
Who would have thought that 100 years ago, when this thing, and it's kind of ironic too.
Well, they did.
100 years.
Well, they actually did plan for this. If folks remember, back in the 70s, 80s, there was these concrete, essentially spans in the Black River right behind the high school, actually right behind Northern Woods.
Yeah, James, I used to jump off of those into the canal.
So a lot of people who grew up here played with those. Those used to be wooden gates. And back in the 60s and 70s, they didn't understand what the wooden gates were for. They saw no use for them, so they took them out.
I thought it was to eventually put a span of a bridge over top of it.
No, those old wooden gates were there so that when the flood waters came up, they would close the wooden gates to prevent trees and debris from coming down the canal and hitting the canal or hitting the Tainer Gate, which would have caused the exact same damage that we experienced. So they actually were pretty thoughtful about this. They had the wooden gates dissolved, but you base on the early 1900s versus what the knowledge was then, and then you come to where we are today. You lose a lot of knowledge in 50 to 100 years. People don't know why the gates were there. They didn't seem to have a purpose. Well, they did, and now, almost 60 years later, we now realize why those gates were there. And so maybe we have to put those gates back up.
Yeah.
So.
Amazing story.
Well, one other thing as well,
yeah.
The Tainer Gate is so old, it has no welds. It's all rivets. It was made before welding technology existed. So when we do repair it, we're going to be able to build this Tainer Gate in a much more sturdy structure that can have a lot more force load and will be stronger and more durable to handle this type of weather experience.
Well, you probably have become way more of an expert on this type of
thing. Yeah,
I tell
people it's way more complicated than people know, and the more we get and explain it, residents start to realize, okay, this is a huge issue we have to tackle.
Yeah, very good. All right, let's hop topics over to what would impact development and boating. A lot going on in Port Huron since you became city manager, but it seems like over the last couple of years, it's just taken a huge surge, maybe coming out of COVID or whatever, but give us, hop around the city and tell us what's happening.
So you have to go back in 2014 when I became the city manager. We had historically high unemployment. We had unemployment about 23% when I took the position of city manager. Today, that is at historic lows, somewhere between 3.5% and 4.5%, depending on the seasonally adjusted rate. We used to chase jobs. Now we chase workers. We've created more than 3,000 new jobs in the city of Port Huron. We have about more than $500 million of new investment. A lot of new advanced manufacturing, in our technology and advanced manufacturing park. We have a lot of new industries, a lot of new companies have moved to town, and it creates growing pains. So now we have all these workers, and they need a place to live, and so now we have a significant housing shortage. Yeah. And it's not just we need workforce housing, but we also need all types of housing. There's a housing shortage for single-family homes, lofts, apartments, you name it. There's a demand for that type of housing, and so. How do we onboard housing stock as fast as possible? The issue becomes is the market we're in. So just in the last 2 years, interest rates have gone from 3.5% to 4% to 7.5% to 8% for commercial. So you're talking 300, 400 basis points on the interest cost, which is your carrying cost. Couple that with the cost of building materials. So after COVID, we saw lumber skyrocket. Those materials have plateaued, but they haven't come down. And so you have higher borrowing cost, higher building costs. It presents two real challenges to getting these projects off the ground. The good news is any major development will require some type of public-private partnership. So we're working with the Michigan State Housing Authority, MISTA. We have a grant proposal before them right now for a 40-unit, $15 million development on the corner of Lincoln and Erie. We are confident we'll see new construction there next year. We're still looking at the River District site. We have the city purchased that site with ARPA dollars for the intention of workforce housing. Getting a developer that can, when we originally announced the project, interest rates were at 3% and COVID hit, and shortly after, now there's a massive gap in funding. So those developers are still at the table. How can we reconfigure that project? How can we approach the state of Michigan to make the funding gap needed to pull that project off? But this is, I talk to families all the time who have, their rents are going up, they can't afford a house. It's not just a Port Huron problem, it's a national problem. But sometimes these national problems, we can't fix the entire country, but working together with stakeholders, we can come up with innovative local solutions to find solutions that work for our community, and every community is different. And so project by project, we really want to focus on making sure that people who work here can afford to live and raise their family here. We want to be an inclusive community that's a place for everyone. We're not just focused on high-end homes or the high-end condos. We're also focused on workforce housing and affordable housing for those who work in the service industry downtown should have a right to live downtown. And so this is a national problem, but we're working hard for local solutions some of the out-of-the-box things we can do, whether that's repurposing an older building, whether that's repurposing commercial properties. We've addressed our zoning. We're now allowing first-level residential in C1 districts. That was never allowed before, but that's because the priority is housing. And if we can make housing in the first level, that makes sense to us when appropriate. So looking at our zoning, looking at our quality housing stock, we've done, the City Council just authorized a housing study. Our last housing study hasn't been done since 2007. A lot's changed since 2007, especially after 08, 09. And so what we want to do is we want to be able to have the data necessary that shows what the demand is, what product is in demand, and that allows us to go out and court developers and say, okay, here's a study that shows if you build this, the market saturation is this. Additionally, the developers can take this study and go to the banks and say, we have a project, this is what we're going to put down, we need some financing to help complete it. So the housing study is key, and it's something that every developer and every bank asks for. When was your last housing study? So we need to update that housing study to really identify what our needs and demands are. Onward, making a longer strategic plan, the city's master plan is up for renew. We need to update our master plan every 10 years. We review it every 5 years, but every 10 years you want to do a material update to your master plan. We will need the housing study information to update the master plan, specifically on future land use planning within the City of Port Huron. What is the needs, what are the priorities, and what land use do we have? Where can we repurpose land, change zoning to make it more applicable to housing? So it all kind of, they look like they're individual projects or individual studies, but they're all going to the long-term strategy. There's a long-term strategy on how do we address housing, bringing more on in the community, because addressing the housing crisis will also address our worker shortage. So if we have a place where people can live, we'll import workers from around the county. We have a lot of people who travel from Macomb and Lapeer and Wayne and Oakland to work here. We want them to move here with their families. And so we want to make sure there's a strategy in place to do that. So there is a broad strategic plan that's driving these individual decisions. And so sometimes when we watch a council meeting, the mayor and council are taking policy actions on these individual items, but it's important to step back and say these are part of a broader strategic plan to help the city move forward.
Last time we sat at this set, we talked on the south end about a project that you were really excited about. Tell us a little bit about what's happening in that Connor area.
Well, I think, so it went from, you had engaged citizens, whether it be the community groups down there, the South Side Initiative, a very engaged citizenry, and we had some, what I believe the most ripe for economic growth is the South Park. There's, I believe, a lot of undervalued properties there, undervalued opportunities, and now developers are taking notice. And so the mayor and council did a year-long community engagement session, working with the community. What do you want to see? What are your hopes and dreams for your neighborhood? That has led to the creation of the Neighborhood Improvement Authority, which is a tax instrument and financing authority. And the authority now has board members made up of residents and business owners from South Park. And so that district will focus on capital planning, capital improvement, so that pedestrian walkways, lighting, water, sewer, roadways, to really focus on creating a culture of economic development in South Park. We're already seeing the fruits of that. You see what the Walker brothers are doing at the old Huron Screw. They're building a marina, a restaurant, and a commercial site. We see new restaurants in that area. We want to bring retail and housing back to that neighborhood as well. South Park has a rich history of being a very diverse community, a historically black community there, but it used to be its own little downtown, and its own separate downtown. And I think the community's vision is to bring back that truly walkable and livable community where you can walk to work, walk to the grocery store, walk home. And I think that's the vision there. The Neighborhood Improvement Authority, through the development plan, has really done a great job of capturing that vision. Now the question becomes can we make a plan of action to execute?
The TIFA, the Tax Increment Finance Authority, allows you to capture money to be able to do that, right?
Correct. It allows us any future tax growth this authority can capture and then repurpose that money, which would go elsewhere otherwise, into infrastructure needs of that specific district. And that's really key because we want to focus on the infrastructure that creates the economic gardening. We have good water, good sewer, good streets, walkable community. Here's sites available for development, and then we approach the developers to develop those sites.
That's good. We will continue here on City Beat with City Manager James Freed in the City of Port Huron right after this.
Lake Huron Medical Center, our dedicated staff are committed to providing comprehensive care that meets your individual needs. We take time to listen to your concerns, understand your needs, and develop a customized treatment plan just for you. Trust in our expertise, experience our compassion, and let us be your partner in achieving optimal health. Visit us today and discover the Lake Huron difference.
Semco Energy Gas Company is dedicated to you with a focus on customer service and fuel today for a sustainable tomorrow. Semco Energy works hard to make your time with family and friends warm and cozy. Semco Energy Gas Company. Natural gas works for Michigan.
Welcome back to City Beat. This is going to be an ongoing program where we have a chance to sit down with James Freed, the city manager of the City of Port Huron. And the wastewater treatment plant has long been I would say a smell that we've enjoyed downtown. What can you tell us about the ongoing controversy around that?
2 to 3 years ago, we began a project for an odor control system to really address the odors that the wastewater plant can put off from time to time, especially if the wind shifts in the right direction. We designed a new system, installed that new system, and I think every resident in Port Huron will tell you that system failed dramatically. It simply does not work. It was not designed properly for the environment within the plant, meaning there's certain levels of chemicals that need to be remediated to prevent the odor from going out. The system that was designed could not in any way meet the demand of the plant. And so we worked with those engineers and those contractors to recoup our money. So the citizens of Port Huron were able to recoup all their money, and this mayor and council just signed a settlement agreement, which brought back about more than $1.9 million into the city to focus now on a system that does work. And so we have contracted out with Fishbeck Engineering, which is a nationally renowned engineering firm that specializes in wastewater plants and odor control systems. And in the next 24 to 36 months, we will design and implement a new odor control system. Most likely, it will use carbon filters type model silos. That's the type of style we'll end up going with. The cost will be somewhere between $3 and $5 million, but it's something that needs to be done. We recognize there's a problem. Sometimes we don't talk publicly about what we're doing to fix it. I think in the last couple of weeks, the citizens now realize that we have been working very diligently behind the scenes to bring rectification and closure to the current issue, and then also a plan of action to solve the problem. And so now that work is ongoing, design is underway, and we hope we get that problem really taken care of in the next 24 to 36 months. In the short term, the plant operators have done an extraordinary job developing remediation efforts from within plant operations and treatments within the plant. So we are now doing treatments in the plant and treating our operations very differently to remediate the smell. And I would say for most people living downtown, it's been a dramatic improvement in the last couple months. And so kudos to that staff, but it is a work in progress. But we recognize there's a problem. We've corrected that problem. Now we have a plan of action to truly solve it.
I had this conversation privately with you, but I'll ask the question a lot of people would want to ask is, why don't you just move the darn thing?
You know, because so first off, it's in a great location for operations, meaning you can't afford to pump sewage from all over the city. So the city is designed by gravity. So we have about 13 different lift stations, but the vast majority of the entire operation
just flows there.
Just flows by gravity. And so that is like one of the lower points in the city where the gravitational system works. Also, to move that plant would be about $350 million to $400 million.
That's why we're not moving it.
That's why we're not moving it. Yeah, that's why we're not moving it. And so, you know, when they built that plant, that was an industrial wasteland. And now that we've seen all the urban renewal and all the development downtown, now people say, well, why'd you build it there? Well, go back to 1965 and look what was there. It was nothing there but wasteland. And so we'll find innovative measures to remediate it, to make sure it's not a nuisance. But overall, that plant, it looks nice aesthetically from the outside. When they built it, they went with brick to make sure it looks nice. And these are pretty much issues that every core community has to deal with a water plant that's centrally located.
Let's talk about some of the success stories around development in the city of Port Huron. I know when you came on board, and then we'll touch on budget as well. But a lot has happened that we've seen in development with partnerships with the county, with other entities. And so I know you can list them off, but give us a feel for the things you're most proud of in development around the city.
So whenever you develop a project, take the Wrigley Center, for instance. In the Wrigley Center, that model can be taken to any lofts downtown or the Citadel building downtown. You have challenges in each project. So each project has a whole set of unique challenges, whether it's be who holds the property, what's the cost of transactioning that property, what's the cost of redevelopment, what's the cost of operation, who will be the tenants. So by working, whether it be philanthropy, the county land bank, the developers and the private sector, we can tackle different challenges to the property. So whether it's getting affordable housing, well, we can look at working with the state or philanthropy to help offset the cost of construction to make those units affordable. Whether it's how do we secure the property, the county land bank can step in to do that, which it did with the Wrigley Center. We want certain economic development opportunities in boutique retail space, working with the Wilson Foundation to subsidize some of those costs. So every project is different, but having all those partnerships and all those relationships to say, okay, here's a unique challenge that maybe we can't solve, but this partner can bring a resource to the table to solve it. And so we sit down with the developers and say, what is it going to take to help you to redevelop this property or to build this housing development? And then we look at all of our partners and say, what can we bring to the table? That's just how we have to do it, a collaborative relationship. I think that's why we're more successful than other cities right now. If you look at the growth, every city in the state seems to be doing pretty well, but if you look at the pace of our economic expansion and economic growth, Port Huron is outpacing and outgrowing at a much more rapid rate than other of our core comparable communities. Why is that? And the outlier is our partnerships. We all work together. I can call up the county, I can call up philanthropy, we can call up our donors, we can call up hosts of private developers to work on things, and builders and contractors. Having good partnerships, playing well in the sandbox with others, that's key to making us a pro-business community. We want to be a pro-growth community with pro-growth policies and a pro-growth culture. And we want people to come here and invest money. We want people to come here and create jobs and opportunities for our residents. It's really, it's about the end of the day is the quality of life for our residents. And if you look at the standard of living, our per capita income is rising. Meanwhile, our poverty rate has dropped every year for the last 8 years. So every year for the last 8 years, more and more people are rising out of poverty and finding prosperity in this community. That's the most important thing. Like, these are individual, we look at statistics, we talk numbers, but at the end of the day, these are moms and dads, sons and daughters and kids going to our schools and trying to build a better life for themselves. And sometimes we overcomplicate government. We overcomplicate what we do. It's very simplistic terms. We just want to help each other build a better life and fulfill our hopes of seeing our kids grow up more prosperous than we are.
Absolutely.
It's very simplistic.
And having been behind closed doors with you in some of these conversations in the EDA board, and for instance, I know for a fact that you can pick up the phone and call Jeff Bohm and get into a meeting today at noon. Or you can talk to Randy Myers, the Community Foundation, to bring together philanthropy. And I know that's happening every day behind closed doors, and that's why we think we've seen such.
Yeah, and I was joking around there. Like, people say, "Oh, it's the good old boys club and the good old girls club."
Yeah.
You want that. Like, you want us to be such strategic partners and such working close relationships that when you have an issue, we can call anyone. You know, we all get along. We all have the same goal. Like, you want us to be working together. You do not we do not in a community this size want warring tribes. The county's warring with the city's warring with the.
There was an era
where
that was the case.
And look at the economic outcomes. Yeah. Look at the economic outcomes. And so sometimes you have to hit rock bottom before you realize what it takes. And if in 2008, this community realized that there was no lifeboat coming. And so if we're going to save this city, we're going to save it ourselves. And so it forced everyone, it was like a refiner's fire, it forced everyone to work together to build these strong relationships. And so now we have an expectation in this community that we expect from our community leaders and from our civic leaders that you work well together, that there's civility and respect and mutual respect among stakeholders and mutual understanding that we're all in this together. And that culture, that's a culture of excellence that we've created here. Which is why we're leading the state. I mean, people can come around, they come from all of the state developers, from all over the state, and they always say, we have never worked in a community that works this good together. Well, there's a reason for that, because we've realized what happens when we don't. There's too much at stake. Our kids need a prosperous future. We need jobs for our residents. We need them to be able to put food on the tables and pay for the house and pay for the gas. These are basic fundamentals of life that the decisions we make as leaders, how we operate together, directly impacts the kitchen table issues of the moms and dads in the city. And I'll be damned if we let anything come between that.
Yeah, good point. Let's hop to the city budget.
Yeah.
I know, having talked to you for years and years about some of the things that you had to do, and I give you kudos, and I've talked to people around the state about this, of restructuring, especially legacy costs, long term. You got those things done, the hard things done. Where does it stand? How do you feel about the city's budget this year and then going forward?
So our budget is balanced and stable. We're not rich, we're not running massive surpluses, but we're balanced and stable. But given that where we were in 2014, we had massive multi-million-dollar deficits in our utility funds. Then we had a general fund deficit, mostly triggered by the sewer separation project and utilities. but also in the general fund and throughout government was the legacy costs, unfunded pension liabilities, unfunded OPEB, which is healthcare liabilities. We were facing more than $140 million of unfunded liabilities. So you have this window of opportunity where you have, when I tell people, when you do a turnaround plan, you need a workout timeline to work out the transition. So you have the turnaround plan, you make the changes, you make the reforms, and then you have the workout period. And you need that long runway to bring the plane in for a nice smooth landing. And so indecision and indecision is a decision. Meaning dithering, not making decisions, kicking the can down the road, there's an opportunity cost, and that's time. Time to work out the problem, to find a financial plan to make it work. We were running out of runway. So we had to address our unfunded liabilities. We had to do it for the next generation. This was going to be this burden of these future generations. For every dollar we spend, there's 67 cents of legacy cost. That's an unseen tax on our children's future.
Let me interrupt just for a second before you continue, because I want to explain for the people watching, a legacy cost is after a person's retired, you still are going to be providing for them.
For the pension and health care. So the difference between what unfunded liabilities, here's what you have in the bank, and this is what it's going to cost to fulfill your obligation. That difference was more than $140 million, and our payments were ballooning. So what we did is we negotiated with our collective bargaining agreements. We bridged down the benefit. We went to healthcare savings accounts instead of retiree healthcare plans. We closed our pension systems and new hires. They are now in a 401k model system, just like the private sector.
So it's pay into it rather than be guaranteed
Correct.
payment on the other end.
But we made the benefit fruitful enough where it will perform just as well as a pension and probably outperform a pension in the long term. Those savings that our workers sacrificed and made those concessions saved about $40 million. But then we were able to restructure our pension liability, which saved $86 million. Then we were able to look, so $86 million, you have $100 million, $106 million in savings there. Then we went to the other side of the balance sheet, which was retiree healthcare cost. And we worked on a Medicare wraparound program. We worked on restructuring the front payouts, and it's very complicated, but we saved $28 million. So our retiree account, our pension fund was at 46% funded. Today it's at 90% funded. Our retiree healthcare account was 28% funded. Today it's at 76% funded. The reason why this is important, it means the tax dollars and the resources that our kids have, they can use to build their own future, not continuing to pay off the unfinished business of the past. Unfunded liabilities are the great moral and ethical question of our time.
For everyone.
For everyone in the
entity.
state of Michigan.
Yep.
Port Huron made the strategic decisions, the difficult decisions. I remember the council meetings, they were tough. Difficult but necessary policy decisions. We were focused on making good policy, not good politics. And I give a lot of kudos to Mayor Rep and the City Council, who boldly led during that time on a legislative agenda, which saved the city from insolvency. I look around the state. It's communities that have not addressed their unfunded liabilities. They have not addressed the long-term debts that the city owes. They have not led because it's kick the can down the road. Well, eventually you run out of road. And I fear that in the next 36 to 48 months, we will see communities across the state of Michigan who have kicked the can down the road run out of road. And the problem is that they no longer have time, sorry about that, they no longer have the timeline, the opportunity time to develop a true comprehensive workout period to fix the problem. And so I'll be watching and praying for those other communities, some very close to us, but when you dither and you don't act, then there's consequences.
Well, the longer you wait, the worse it gets.
It does. It does.
So it just continues to multiply.
And the answer becomes much more gruesome, and the decision making becomes much more difficult.
And it's a lot more money that we're talking about.
Yeah, and so the citizens, I want the citizens to know that we have balanced budgets. The Parks and Recreation millage, every dollar that the Parks and Recreation millage has generated, we have been able to leverage to get $2 or $3 in state and philanthropy money. That's why we have the nicest parks in the entire region. We have wonderful parks. Our parks team has done a great job in designing. Our public safety, our crime is at historic lows. That's because we invested in our police department. They have the tools necessary. We got rid of the drug problem. We kicked the drugs out. Working with the Sheriff's Department, the DTF, Matt King, our Sheriff King, does an amazing job with the DTF force, ridding our community of these drugs and opioids. Have done a marked difference from where we were. We used to average 12 overdoses a day. Now I'm lucky if I get 1 or 2 a month on my desk. And so marked progress, but we have safe streets. Any street in the city you can walk down, raise your family, and it's safe. We have a wonderful fire department and EMS and medical team that do great first responses. They're there in like 4 minutes whenever you call them. Well-equipped, well-trained. So having our police and fire, public safety is number one. It's a safe and secure community with opportunity. So it's opportunity, jobs, housing, safety, you feel safe, and then it's the quality of life. The parks and recreation, our great schools, our quality schools, our amazing community college here. This is a place really where you can raise a family, an opportunity, and never have to leave the city limits.
It's a great way to finish.
It is.
Plan to do this every few weeks with you.
Appreciate it.
You'll do that with us. I think it's great to get you on and to let people hear behind the scenes what really goes on within a city and what does the city manager have to deal with. So we appreciate the time.
And I have an open door policy. You can come to the MOC, come up to the 4th floor. I'm right there as you get off the elevator. I have a lot of people who stop in and they have a question. I am talking for a half hour with them. Sometimes I'm jammed up on the schedule, but I'll find a way to get your phone call in or get your email returned or meet with you. Because it's very important that I hear from the residents. It helps me make better policy recommendations to the elected officials. And when we're developing policy on a staff level, that community engagement is really helpful with us coming up with the best solution that fits our community. Because not every community is the same. Not every shoe fits everybody. And so
But it also lets you understand their thought process too, and what they're thinking about their city.
Yep, and I tell people, it's like, you see me in the grocery store, stop me. I love going through Kroger and says, I hate to bother you. I'm like, no, you pay my salary. You can stop me all you want and talk to me. I like hearing from you. I learn a lot going to the grocery store and going out to dinner and with my family, and I want that interaction. Don't feel like you're bothering me. Feel free to stop me in the store. Feel free to just grab me and say, hey, what's going on here? I want to be able to have that communication with
Sounds good, James. Thank you again.
Yep, thank you.
And that'll wrap up this edition of City Beat with James Freed, the city manager of Port Huron. We'll do this again here in a few weeks. Thank you for joining us on Thumb Coast TV.